Hi everybody and welcome to my workshop. Today's project is going to be a square edge platter, and I've been commissioned by a local restaurant to make up 12 pieces, but they want to see a sample first. So I have a few pieces here that I've prepared earlier, and when I mean earlier, I made them about 25 years ago. But they're perfect examples to sort of talk about. Now these measure roughly about 10 inches square, and that can be a little bit deceiving because it sounds quite small, but actually from corner to corner is 14 inches. So you do need a decent sized lathe to be able to spin these. The other thing you'll notice is these beautiful oval rings here in the center. So that's to do with where this piece was positioned within the tree. So if I take this piece at the back, just turn it around here for a second. And in order to get the oval rings, when I cut out the board on the sawmill and took this piece from within the board, I would have kept these corners up to the bark side. So in doing that, these lovely oval growth rings start to shine through. But one thing that's really important when I use the sawmill, if I just grab a piece of wood for a second, if you imagine that this is a larger log sitting on the bed of the mill, if that log is not sitting in a horizontal position, if it's tipped a little bit because it's larger on one side or the log is a little bit twisted, what will happen in that case is that these growth rings will be positioned off center. And one of the issues with that is you can get a lot of tear out when it comes to turning the piece, especially at the bottom. And it doesn't look the best if this is sitting up in the corner. So I'll always be very, very careful with the mill to run parallel with the grain. The other thing that's really important is an even wall thickness on the bowl. So if we go in there a little closer for a second, you can see that the thickness is uniform the whole way across. And because you have literally a cross section that'll be visible on that piece, it's really important that you get that right. But the first step today is come next door with me into the classroom. I have a board already lined up and I'll show you how to cut this piece out to get started. The piece of wood that I'm going to be working with for today's project is this piece of Irish beech. Now this beech has this wonderful flame pattern running all the way through, and this is quite common on some of the larger beech trees here in Ireland. So it doesn't look like a whole lot right now, but actually when that's polished up, it really can look quite beautiful. Just before I mark out this piece and cut it up on the bandsaw, I've identified a couple of little small cracks on the surface. So the plan is to try and avoid these as I mark them out and just make sure none of these are placed anywhere near the corners so that they don't become fragile and break off. The first step is to draw a line parallel to the grain, and here I'm avoiding some of those defects I spoke about. The dimensions of the piece are roughly about 10 inches square by 3 inches in thickness. So that's about 25 centimeters by 7.5 centimeters. The first step here is to put on the faceplate, and I have to decide which is the best side to stick the faceplate on. And in terms of grain orientation, it really doesn't matter. This interesting flame pattern is going to come through at the end regardless. But what I do see there underneath is that little crack, and if I keep that on the lower side, all of that will get turned away. So when I'm putting it on the lathe, I use the hand wheel to feed it on, and just before it reaches the end of the tread, I give it a little flick to hold it securely in place. And we'll just make sure the tool rest is not touching the piece. I don't want it too close. I want the tool to rest on the bar and not be sitting on the end of the bevel. And that is looking pretty good. The tool that I'm going to use today is a 5/8 inch or 16 millimeter bar bowl gouge, and in my collection it's called the GL number 4. So it's nice and sharp, sharpened on the Tormek, sharpened to 55 degrees on the tip there, and the heel is just ground out of the way. So it's not easy to see exactly where I need to place the tool, but what I'm going to do is start off nice and light just to feel where the tool wants to cut, and just follow through, and then just come back, bring it in a little closer, back again. So today I'm going to work with the 128 millimeter or 5 inch Vic Mark jaws. So we're just going to measure for that and apply that measurement onto the piece. So when I'm measuring with the dividers, I'm going to set the dividers in line with the corner of that jaw, but on this side extend it by about 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch, and that'll allow for the fact that the jaws are tapered back. So when I'm marking the diameter, the first thing I'm going to do here is just mark the center, and just be careful as you go in for the stop switch there not to hit the corners. I can always move it away from that position if I'm nervous, but I'm not worried at the moment. So raising the tool rest up, and I'm going to just mark that line through the center line. And this is always the tricky part for some of my students, knowing exactly where to position this. So the first thing I need to just remind you is just never let the right hand side touch the wood. The wood's rotating this way, so it'll lift the dividers up very, very quickly towards you, and you don't want that to happen. So you're going to be just touching this side, keeping dividers level on that center line. Now I'm just going to pull the tool towards myself, get rid of those ridges. So looking at the corners here, what's important is that they are nice and crisp. So if you look at the way the grain is running in this piece right now, it's in a horizontal position, and in this area is where the bowl gouge can easily pick up and break those corners away. So looking over there, it's nice and sharp as well. When it comes to sanding the back of the platter, I have a few options, and one is to just grab a regular sanding pad with appropriate sandpaper, such as a 120 or 180 grit, and sand with the grain. But what's particularly challenging about that is sanding in beside the dovetail, and it's not easy to give it a good even surface without being left with some scratch marks. So my preference is to use a sanding pad with a lathe rotating. So one of the issues with a small sanding pad in the drill, especially a soft foam, is it's very, very easy for that to get damaged. So my preference is to use something a little bit larger and firmer. So this is a 3-inch one, which will work, but better again is this 6-inch pad. So the 6-inch pad is not really made for wood turners, and it's not made to go in a regular drill. So what we've done here is we've made up these little adapters that you can purchase from our website, and that'll go on to these sanding pads that we also sell. And this will fit in a regular drill, or it'll fit in an angle drill, such as this one here made by Makita. And the important thing is when I'm using this is to just tilt the head back a little bit. Just before I start to hollow out the inside, I'm going to just take a walk around the lathe for a moment and just mark a line following the outside curve. So whatever I want that wall thickness to be, just a little bit under 8 millimeters or 5/16 for the moment, and then I can always go a little bit thinner afterwards. So using my finger to follow the outside profile and a sharp pencil. Okay, so I can turn over the tool now and just come in the other direction as well. Just pause there. That feels good now. So again, if there's any ridges there, before taking any more material away, just go back to that scraper once again. Okay. Now another very, very useful little tool that I have here is this Japanese scraper. So that's made from a hacksaw blade where the whole blade is hardened and the teeth have been removed from it, and then with a little electrical tape, some bamboo just wrapped around one side. The next step is to work on the tenon at the bottom of this platter. So rather than to remove it, I'm going to incorporate it into the piece. And for that, I'm using a vacuum chuck. So the vacuum chuck that I'm using is in 3 parts. This is called a drum chuck. It's about 5 inches or 125 millimeters in diameter. On the other side here, this is a rotary adapter. So it allows me to connect the hose up to the revolving spindle. and then I have a 3-way valve here to turn it on and off and to allow me to release the piece at the end. On the base, I'm creating a slight dome, and not only will this look better, but it makes it less likely that I will go through at the center because I'm not removing any material really from this area. But I am somewhat following the shape on the inside, so it'll have a nice sense of proportion and balance. The finish that I'm going to use today needs to be food safe and durable. So I'm going to use Osmo Top Coat High Solid Oil, and I have an option of using either the clear matte or the satin. So I've given this piece 24 hours for the grain to raise, and if I feel it now, I can feel that the surface feels slightly rough again. So the grain is raised, and now all I need to do is sand it back and apply the final coat of finish. This piece has now had 24 hours to dry, and I'm really pleased with the final surface. So a nice blemish-free surface, no sign of any cloth marks, no sanding scratches, and I think I've ticked all the right boxes. So I've only one job left to do, which is to sign my name on the bottom, and then I'm ready to hand it over to the restaurant owner just to see what he thinks. So thank you for watching the video, and I look forward to seeing your version of this project.